Hey everybody, so I'm back again with some more ramblings, and today I want to give you my take on lower reps versus higher reps for building muscle, which is best and why. So let's get to it. So I've seen a number of videos recently that claim that strength training, that's training with intensity in the 2 to 3 up to 5 rep range, and hypertrophy training, that's training in the 6 up to 12 or 15 rep range, are the same thing and produce the same results in terms of the amount of hypertrophy they will induce in a given period of time. I would argue that for a lot of people, probably even the majority, this is just not the case, and that to get the best returns in terms of the amount of muscle you can possibly build, the vast majority of your training should be done in the 8 to 12 rep range while progressively overloading over time. Now, this is not to say that training with a greater level of intensity can't be extremely effective in terms of building muscle, and indeed I program in training blocks with greater intensity on the big 3 lifts, and I've recently done a video on this very topic. But even during these periods of greater intensity on the compound movements, the majority of my training is still done in the 8 to 12 rep range. My central issue with doing a lot of training in the 2 to 3 up to 5 rep range is the amount of time it takes to recover between sets, and indeed the amount of time it takes to recover from workout to workout, as less reps with a heavier load, well, what I would consider to be a heavier load anyway, tends to impact my nervous system to a much higher degree than when I'm training in the 8 to 12 rep range, which predominantly taxes my muscular system, assuming I'm being smart about the amount of volume I'm using in my training. When I'm training in the 8 to 12 rep range, I find I generally have good recovery between sets, with plenty of energy to do multiple sets on multiple exercises, and I'm usually recovered and ready to train again the next day, assuming I'm being smart about how I organise my training split. This is very much in contrast to when I'm lifting primarily with strength goals in mind, as the heavier loads tends to really zap my peripheral nervous system, which affects my ability to do additional isolation exercises after I've completed my heavy compound movements. In addition, my ability to train in a number of consecutive days is greatly affected, which obviously adversely impacts on the amount of frequency and volume I can use in my training. As frequency and volume are 2 of the most important components in maximising the amount of muscle you can possibly build, this reduced volume, because of the increased fatigue accumulation because of the heavier loads, tends to really affect people like myself who've been cursed with average genetics for building muscle, where eking out every ounce of new muscle can be a painstaking process after we've exhausted our initial spurt of muscle building in the first year to 18 months of consistent weight training. Another benefit of training in the 8 to 12 rep range is that it will allow you to continuously hone your technique, which should help to ensure that you're less likely to pick up niggles and tweaks, and this is in contrast to training with a heavier load, where the risk of picking up an injury is somewhat increased simply due to the sheer amount of weight you're asking your body to handle, regardless of how good your technique is. Again, some people seem like they have connective tissue that seems like it's made out of freaking titanium, but for a good percentage of us, heavier loads with less reps will somewhat increase our chances of picking up an injury. So the bottom line on this particular point is that the less time you're spending trying to work around niggles and tweaks, the more time you're spending in the gym training effectively, maximising the amount of muscle you can build. So to sum up the video, if maximising the amount of muscle you can build is your training priority, then do the vast majority of your training in the 8 to 12 rep range while strategically programming in blocks of greater intensity on the compound movements. Okay, so if you got this far into the video, hopefully you liked the video, so please leave a comment and like the video.